Welcome back. Now, it's been a significant day at the infected blood inquiry. The former Prime Minister, Sir John Major, who was in power while the government dealt with the fallout, gave evidence. He told that inquiry that it was incredibly bad luck that thousands of people were infected with HIV or hepatitis C after getting treatment on the NHS. A lot of those people and families of those who died were watching, and they were deeply unhappy with what he said. Here's our health correspondent, Catherine Jones.
The man who was Prime Minister when the scale of the UK's infected blood scandal became clear, called to explain how he dealt with it. This inquiry is examining what has been called the biggest treatment disaster in NHS history. Up to 30,000 people given blood and blood products contaminated with HIV and hepatitis C.
And repeat after me.
Under oath, Sir John Major explained how ministers wrestled with how to help haemophiliacs and other victims without opening the floodgates to all kinds of other claims. But victims and their families gasped at his description of their plight.
There's no amount of compensation you can give that could actually compensate for what had happened to them. What had happened to them was incredibly bad luck, awful, and it was not something that anybody was unsympathetic to.
Are you joking? Well, let you know. You tell that family whose son died of full-blown AIDS at the age of 7. You tell them bad luck.
A blood transfusion after the birth of her first child left Michelle with hepatitis C.
Basically, they've given us a death sentence and we committed no crime. We did nothing wrong.
2 weeks after taking over from Margaret Thatcher in 1990, John Major allowed his government to come to an out-of-court settlement that gave victims more money.
We needed a settlement. However the settlement came about, we needed one. And an agreed settlement between those acting for haemophiliac victims and the government was self-evidently the best way to proceed.
But what Mark remembers is an ultimatum that unless every victim settled, no one would get help.
I knew men were out there with families who were dying and needed that money now. So for them I had to sign, but I certainly didn't want to. And I've always said for this last 30 odd years that I was blackmailed into it. I was coerced into signing my rights away and not knowing what I was even signing.
Victims of the infected blood scandal have waited for decades to hear how successive governments made judgments that affected their lives so profoundly. Today's evidence from a former Prime Minister helping to build up a picture of how it could have happened.
Well, as you can see, Catherine joins us now live in the studio. And victims have been waiting an awfully long time to hear from people like Sir John Major. How do you feel it went down?
Well, look, Mark, you saw my report, he was told at the age of 14 he had HIV and wouldn't live to adulthood. Michelle, who you also saw, her liver is irreparably damaged by the hepatitis that she contracted. So I think what they and all the other victims I spoke to today really wanted was something heartfelt, something personal about how this could have happened to them. But very much what they got was still a politician's perspective. Now, don't get me wrong, I think John Major was pretty sympathetic. He made it clear he understood the moral case for helping and supporting these people. But it was very much a world of sitting in Downing Street reading dry memos about, Treasury overspends and legal precedents. And there was just this complete disconnect between those high-level decisions and what impact it really had on people's lives. And so I'm afraid there's probably more of that to come, because it's now a series of health ministers that will be giving evidence over the next few weeks, starting with Virginia Bottomley, if you can remember her.
OK, we can. Thank you, Catherine. Please.